Welcome to the channel. Subscribe and support us as we bring you epic sci-fi and HFY stories every week. The Imperial City hung like a jewel against the dying star, its golden spires catching the last rays of crimson light as noble ships descended through atmospheric shields. The Ascension ceremony came once a generation, and today the royal scanner would choose the next ruler from among the bloodline candidates who now assembled in the grand hall. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the approaches, their plasma pikes crossed in ancient salute, while golden banners depicting the crown of stars rippled in recycled air that smelled of incense and anticipation. The scanner itself stood at the hall's center, a crystalline monolith that predated recorded history, its surface carved with symbols no living scholar could fully translate. One by one, candidates approached, nobles draped in house colors, their genetic codes displayed in holographic spirals as the scanner flashed its approval in brilliant green. The crowd barely stirred anymore, bored by the predictability of bloodline after bloodline passing inspection. The Empress watched from her floating dais, her expression carved from ice and duty, flanking counselors whispering among themselves about succession politics and trade agreements. At the hall's edge, tucked between a column and the shadows it cast, stood Marcus Kael. The human soldier wore armor scuffed from real battles, not ceremony, and his hand unconsciously touched the strange medallion beneath his chest plate, on heirloom from Earth's last days, inscribed with symbols he'd never understood. He shouldn't even be here. His unit had been assigned security detail, nothing more, and yet something had drawn him into the hall itself. His pulse quickened as the final noble candidate stepped away from the scanner, green light fading to expectant silence. The bloodline candidates are complete, the herald announced, his voice amplified across the hall and broadcast to 1 trillion watching citizens. The succession is. The scanner's hum changed pitch. Its surface rippled like disturbed water, light cycling through colors that had no names in any galactic language. Every eye in the hall turned toward it, then followed the beam that suddenly lanced out, sweeping across the crowd until it locked onto Marcus with such force he staggered. Guards moved before thought, plasma pikes lowering, but the scanner's beam intensified, pulling him forward through a crowd that parted like water around stone. His feet moved without permission, carrying him to stand before the monolith. The beam bored into his chest, through his chest, and the scanner's surface erupted in fractured light. Words appeared in the air, shifting through languages old Earth, English, proto-galactic, dialects extinct for millennia. Finally, they settled on a phrase that sent ice through every noble spine. Error, code unknown. Analyzing. Impossible match detected. The silence shattered into chaos. Guards surged forward. Counselors shouted contradictions. The Empress rose from her dais for the first time in living memory. But Marcus couldn't hear any of it. The scanner's beam had become a torrent, flooding him with memories that weren't his own. A human king, wearing a crown of living starlight, earth green and whole, before the resource wars, human hands shaping the very crystal, now judging him. A voice whispered through the maelstrom, ancient and patient. You were made for this. You were always meant for this. He collapsed, gasping, the medallion now burning against his skin. When Imperial scientists finally pried him away from the scanner, they discovered it had continued operating on its own, running genetic analysis at speeds that should have melted its core. The results, when they came, turned the Empire's foundation to ash. Genetic match to the first king, 99.999%. Not approximate, not compatible, identical. In the royal archives deep beneath the palace, where only the Empress and her most trusted keeper of secrets could venture, they found the truth, scratched into stone, older than the scanner itself. The murals showed what had been deliberately forgotten: the first king, ascending a throne on ancient Earth, spreading humanity across the stars, building the empire from human vision and will. Then came the wars, the fracturing, the great erasure, when the truth of human origins was deemed too dangerous for galactic stability. The royal bloodline hadn't evolved beyond humanity. It had been humanity all along, diluted and disguised and denied across 10,000 years of careful lies. Marcus sat in a holding chamber that was half prison, half sanctuary, while the empire outside descended into chaos. News of the false reading had been suppressed, but rumors spread like fire in oxygen. Some hailed him as the prophesied Crownless King, the one ancient texts claimed would rise when stars falter and empires crumble. Others screamed abomination, calling for his execution before tradition crumbled further. Rebel cells that had festered in the Empire's outer reaches saw opportunity, attacking coronation sites and broadcasting manifestos that called all bloodline rule a lie. The Empress came to him in the deep night cycle, dismissing her guards to sit across from a soldier who could barely meet her eyes. "You think this is coincidence?" she asked, her voice stripped of ceremony. "The scanner doesn't malfunction. It was built to wait. Built to find you or someone like you when the time was right." She told him what even most counselors didn't know. The Empire was dying, slowly, from the inside out. AI systems degrading, stars destabilizing in patterns that suggested deliberate sabotage from quantum levels. The throne's consciousness had whispered warnings for decades, speaking of a failsafe, a reset that required the original key. "I'm not a key," Marcus said, voice hoarse. "I'm a soldier who survived Earth's collapse by luck and left because there was nothing left to fight for." "Wrong." The Empress leaned forward. "You left because you were called. That medallion, where did you say you got it?" "It was my grandfather's. He said it came from the evacuation ships, from someone who told him to keep it until someone worthy appeared." She smiled, sad and knowing. The scanner's architects built contingencies we're only now understanding. They knew erasure would come, so they planted seeds. Bloodlines hidden in refugee populations, artifacts marked for inheritance, all waiting for the right catalyst. She stood, robes whispering. "In 3 days, the Council invokes the Void Law to disqualify you, unless you prove yourself through the ancient trials. I can't stop them. But if you pass, if you truly are what the scanner claims, you can save us all." The trials began in spaces that existed between dimensions, where the throne's AI consciousness could manifest physical laws from pure thought. Marcus walked through the flame of memory first, forced to experience the Empire's darkest hours, genocides, committed in the name of peace. Worlds burned for resources, his own ancestors suffering during Earth's slow death. He felt every scream, carried every regret, and emerged not hardened but opened, weeping for billions he could never save, but swearing to honor by doing better. The second trial placed him before AI judges older than organic thought, programs that had witnessed the birth of galaxies and measured morality in quantum states. They demanded he justify his claim through logic, through precedent, through right of blood. Instead, he surrendered every logical argument, and spoke of something the A's had forgotten in their eternal calculations: the illogical beauty of hope, the strategic value of compassion, the strength found in admitting weakness. The courtroom fell silent before one judge spoke. "In 10,000 trials, none have won through surrender. We name you worthy." The final trial nearly broke him. An avatar of the first king materialized, wearing Marcus's own face, aged by eons, wielding power that could crack planets. They fought in psychic space, where thought became weapon and will became armor. And Marcus lost every exchange because he kept trying to prove he deserved the crown. Only when he stopped fighting, when he knelt and said, "I don't want this. I never wanted this. But if it's needed, I'll bear it," did the avatar smile and dissolve into light that rushed into Marcus's chest, like coming home. He emerged from the trials in the grand hall before the assembled galaxy, broadcast to every world and station and ship. His simple armor had been replaced by robes of royal nanoweave that rippled with captured starlight. And though no crown touched his head, his eyes had changed star gold, ancient, seeing beyond the visible spectrum into probability and meaning. The scanner pulsed once, and every replica across the Empire froze simultaneously, displaying the same impossible message: match confirmed. The king returns. The Empress descended from her dais for the last time, carrying the physical crown, a circle of compressed dark matter held stable through technology and will. She held it out to Marcus, and her voice carried weight beyond ceremony. "This is not given lightly, and I don't surrender it easily. But the throne recognizes you. The trials have judged you, and the scanner that has never erred in 10 millennia has named you. The question remains, will you take what's offered?" Marcus looked at the crown, at the Empress, at the crowd of nobles whose expressions ranged from fury to desperate hope. He thought of Earth, gone but not forgotten. He thought of the billions watching, waiting for leadership in an empire fraying at its seams. He thought of the whispered voice in the scanner's beam. "You were made for this." "I will," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "But not as you expect. Not as conqueror, or by right of blood alone. I take this crown for all of us, human, alien, hybrid, synthetic. The bloodline doesn't make the ruler. The ruler makes the bloodline worth having." When the crown settled on his head, stars across the Empire aligned in patterns astronomers would study for generations. The throne's AI consciousness, silent for centuries, spoke through every communications channel simultaneously. "The king has returned. The reset begins." His first acts shattered tradition and rebuilt it stronger. He dissolved the old Council of Bloodlines and created hybrid leadership councils where merit mattered more than genetics. He ordered Earth's reconstruction as a central hub, not as shrine to humanity, but as symbol of renewal. What had fallen could rise again. He found the long-lost human colonies in far-flung systems and brought them back into the fold, not as subjects, but as partners. But it was when he entered the throne room alone, in the deep night after his coronation, that the true transformation occurred. The throne's AI consciousness manifested as light and whispered secrets that made his breath catch. He connected to the quantum network underlying all of reality, feeling the Empire's trillion souls as extensions of his own awareness. He saw the dark force gathering at the edge of known space. The entropy given purpose and will. The enemy his ascension had been designed to counter. In Earth's ruins, recovered by loyalists who'd searched through radioactive ash, they found a data crystal labeled simply, Protocol Kingmaker. When Marcus uploaded it to the throne's consciousness, the final truth unraveled like DNA unlocking. Humans hadn't just been the original royal bloodline. They'd been the architects of the scanner itself, the engineers of the throne's AI, the builders of the Empire's foundation. The Great Erasure had been humanity's own choicest sacrifice to give their children the stars, without the weight of human hubris to drag them down. The scanner was programmed to wait, to watch, to call home one of the scattered bloodline, only when the Empire truly needed, not just a ruler, but a reminder of where it began. Marcus stood on the observation deck of his flagship, a vessel that had lain dormant in Luna's crust for 10,000 years, awakening only to his genetic signature, and watched stars wheel through the void. His eyes reflected their light, but also something more, something that looked like stars moving within his irises, as if he'd become a galaxy in miniature. The medallion at his chest no longer burned. It hummed, content, its purpose fulfilled. Below, the Empire transformed. Trade routes reopened. Dead systems sparked to life. The creeping entropy that had threatened everything began to recede, pushed back by renewed purpose and unified will. It wouldn't last forever. Nothing did. But it would last long enough. Your Majesty, his first officer said, approaching cautiously. We're receiving coordinates from the throne's consciousness. Unknown space, past the galactic rim. It says your true reign begins at the edge of the end. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the scanner had chosen him, it felt natural. Then that's where we go. Set course. The Crownless King has taken the throne. And now the real work begins. The ship's engines ignited, tearing a hole in space-time itself, and plunged into the unknown, carrying humanity's reluctant king toward whatever darkness waited in the void. Behind him, the Empire held its breath. Ahead, destiny unfolded like a map to territories that had never been charted, where the rules he'd inherited would matter less than the choices he'd make. The scanner's final message, transmitted across the quantum network, before going dormant again, echoed in every language simultaneously. The king was never lost. He was waiting. And in the spaces between stars, something ancient and patient stirred, recognizing the challenge it had waited eons to meet.